There is a kind of faith that doesn't tremble in the face of slander, a faith that stands, even when the whole world howls against it. That was the faith of Abraham, the father of the faithful. And friend, if we are ever called to walk in his footsteps, may we not be found lacking. May we stand boldly, empowered by the Spirit of God, even when obedience means ridicule, rejection, or risk. Think of Martin Luther. Imagine his lips trembling as he first dared to speak what no one would, that the Pope himself stood against the gospel. He is Antichrist, Luther said, not out of hatred, but out of truth. And suddenly, the man who had once been respected, honored, and followed became an outcast, a target, a laughingstock. They called him drunk. They called him demon-possessed. They said he married a nun out of lust, and that he was sold to Satan. The crowd that once cheered, now jeered. The church that once welcomed him, now cursed him. And yet, he stood. Luther said, I know that. God has spoken truth to my soul. Man is saved by faith in Jesus Christ, not by the indulgences of Rome, not by the ceremonies of men. And though they tried to bury his name in shame, he chose to speak. He chose to burn if needed, because when the truth of God grips a man, no accusation can silence him. That's what real faith looks like. Faith that doesn't just survive persecution, it shines in it. Abraham had that faith too. When God asked the unthinkable, when obedience seemed insane, he didn't delay, he didn't argue, he didn't demand a sign, he simply obeyed. Listen to this. Real faith doesn't wait for popular opinion. It answers to divine command. It doesn't follow the world's applause, it follows God's voice. And here's the most incredible thing. Abraham's faith wasn't just strong because of his inner willpower, it was strong because he believed that even when he gave up everything, God would bless him. That even in death, God would glorify himself. Abraham didn't know how the story would end, but he believed in the author. He believed that if God asked for Isaac, then somehow, some way, Isaac would rise again. Because God doesn't lie, and God never fails. So let me speak to the one today who feels alone in their obedience, to the one mocked for their faith, to the one accused, abandoned, or misunderstood for doing what is right. Stand firm. You don't answer to the crowd. You answer to the King, and when the world calls you mad, call it faith. When they say you're foolish, say I'm following God. When they shame you, wear it as a crown. Because if you must stand alone to obey God, then stand alone. You are never truly alone when God is with you. Remember this, truth is still truth, even if no one believes it. Obedience is still obedience, even if it costs you everything. And faith is still faith even when it walks through fire. So rise up with courage like Abraham, speak with boldness like Luther, and live with the kind of faith that says, though the world may rage, I will not be silent. I will obey my God whatever the cost. And in the end, the world may forget your name, but heaven will not.
There are moments in life when every word from heaven feels like a sword when God's voice, instead of comforting, cuts deep into the soul. Abraham knew that moment when God said to him, take now your son, not his wealth, not his flocks, not his silver or gold, but his son. It was like God reached into the very core of Abraham's being and touched what hurt the most. This wasn't just any son. This was Isaac, the miracle child, the fulfillment of a lifetime of promises, the laughter of a once barren household, the only son left after Ishmael was sent away, the lamp of Abraham's old age, the heartbeat of his legacy. And now, God says, offer him to me. Friends, what do you do when the very thing God gave you, he asks back? What do you do when your promise becomes your test, when the gift becomes the altar? This is not about losing something you never loved. This is about surrendering what you love most, your son, your only son, Isaac, whom you love. God names it all. He names the pain, he names the loss, he names the affection. And still he says, give him to me. That is the ultimate test of faith, not in shouting, not in singing, but in silent obedience when your heart is breaking. Abraham did not argue. He rose early. He journeyed 3 days. He walked with the wood, the fire, and the knife. But more than anything, he walked with trust. Sometimes God allows a trial so deep, not because he delights in our pain, but because he desires to reveal the depth of our faith and the greatness of his provision. And you know what happened on that mountain? God stopped the knife. God provided a ram, and through that obedience the blessing came not just to Abraham, but 2 generations after him, even to us today. So let me ask you, what is your Isaac? What is the one thing you treasure, that God may be asking you to place on the altar, not to destroy you, but to prove you, to grow you, and to show you that he is enough? Remember, God never wastes a painful test. If he leads you to the mountain, he will meet you there. And in the end, you will not lose what he has promised. You will discover who he really is. Jehovah Jireh, the Lord who provides, so hold nothing back. Trust Trust him with your Isaac, because your greatest test may become your greatest testimony.